if I could, I would do it for free. That's been a real litmus test for me. Is this a job I would do for free?
Did you know the average person will work 90,000 hours in their lifetime? What if you could use those hours to find fulfillment and become a disruptor for good? Welcome to the Work That's Worth It podcast. I'm Georgie Enthoven, and I'm here to demonstrate that an ambitious, meaningful, and rewarding career is not just a dream, it's achievable. Each episode will dive into conversations with global change makers who've cracked the code on combining income and impact. If you've ever felt like you were torn between a paycheck and your purpose, or maybe you simply yearn for more purpose, you're going to be exposed to the ambitious humans who have done it themselves. Ready to make your work worth it? Let's get started. Today is super exciting because we have our first politician as a guest on the show, Laura Capps, who is now the chair of the Board of Supervisors in Santa Barbara County. She has devoted her career to public service, serving as a White House speechwriter for President Clinton, a communications director for John Kerry's presidential campaign, a senior advisor to the United States Senate, to Senator Edward Kennedy, and part of Al Gore's climate change not-for-profit. That's a heavy list. She's also a lifelong champion of ending the cycle of poverty. Capps served as president of Working Hero Action, a national not-for-profit focused on ending poverty by expanding the earned income tax credit, and served as spokesperson for No Kid Hungry. For 6 years, she served on the Santa Barbara Unified District School District Board of Trustees, and there she led the charge from the board to create a more sustainably powered school district. Capps previously served on Santa Barbara County Commission for Women and on the Board of Trustees for her alma mater, the University of California, Berkeley. She has a master's from the London School of Economics. Laura, welcome. It's so great to have you here on the Work That's Worth It podcast.
Thanks for having me. How fun.
Yeah, I am particularly excited to have my first politician on the show. And I thought we could jump in. Laura and I actually met at UC Berkeley way back in the day, and she got into politics pretty early. So I thought we would jump in right to that early transition point for you and what drew you to it and how you got started.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's one of these stories about being told you can do something so that you visualize it. And for me, it's kind of a corny story, but my parents took my siblings and I to Washington, D.C. for a sort of a typical spring break trip when I was 9 years old. And I was mesmerized by that city. It's very electric, the vibe, the energy, the change that's always there. And I remember walking along, looking up at sort of the monuments and the Capitol with real amazement. And my dad picked up on what I was experiencing and said, you could work here someday. And it kind of blew me away. Like I just had never even thought about what I was going to do yet or anything. And I'm so glad he said that because I kind of decided right then and there that I wanted to try that. And it wasn't like I was completely driven. I wasn't sort of this driven kid with an agenda or anything like that. But it was always ever since that point, it was always in the back of my mind that I would go to DC.
So he planted a seed for you and it just made it possible.
Yeah. And just kind of a casual comment that you do with your kids all the time, or you do with your friends. But for me, it opened a door.
Yeah. And then how did you make that a reality? You know, they call it going from earning to learning, but how did you make that, learning to earning. So how did you make that a reality?
I just started to pay more attention. And I grew up in a household, my parents weren't political, but they paid attention to, we watched the news at night. We talked about issues. They paid attention to local issues. We would show up at an environmental rally after the oil spill or something like that. Not too crazy. I wouldn't call them activists, but they were engaged. And so I started to pay more attention to that and just had my sights on going to Washington, D.C. after college. And that's what I did. And so I just started paying attention to who my senator was, sort of who the leadership was. I wouldn't say I was a junkie at all, but I was definitely paying attention from a young age and found it exciting.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you start off with in Washington, D.C.?
So this is one of my lessons is I started off as an intern. I had probably, before I actually got a salary, I think I had 7 internships in my life. I worked at our local news station, our TV station. I worked at our local paper. I worked for our local state senator, which is a local position, even in high school. So I had these internships, and I do need to qualify that means that I was able to financially work for free. And certainly most people can't do that. So that was, gave me a huge head start from a place of privilege, which I recognize. So right after college, basically, I got myself an internship at the White House. It was very lucky how it happened, but I parlayed that 4-month internship into a 4-year job at the White House. So once the internship was ending, I went for a paid position, a salaried position. I was 2 months shy of my 23rd birthday, and I was hired in the West Wing at the White House. So the stars definitely aligned from me, like right out of the gate. And that often doesn't happen. But one of my pieces of advice for people that want to go into politics is internships are plentiful. And if you make yourself useful in a very high pressured situation, like I did as an intern, once the position came open to work there, they knew that I knew the ropes, and I had survived basically this sort of boot camp of pressure. And then I was hired.
Yeah. And for people listening who are interested in following your pathway and taking on internships, how easy is that to find? Is there a central resource for that, or are you looking locally, most depending on where you're living?
Yeah, 2 tracks, I would say. One exciting way to get into politics is to work on a campaign. And literally anyone can volunteer on a campaign. And there's campaigns happening all the time. Certainly every 4 years, there's big campaigns happening, presidential campaigns. But basically every 2 years, sometimes more frequently, there's local campaigns happening. It could be for a school board member that you care a lot about or you have a connection to. And volunteers create the backbone of campaigns. And I've never seen a volunteer turned away. Instead, they're always trying to seek and get volunteers. And you really have a ton of exposure if you volunteer on a campaign. And if you care about something, it's a great way to learn more about it, to get involved. You can volunteer for 2 hours a week, 2 hours a month. You could volunteer for 20 hours a day. Like, there's so much work to be had. I've worked on presidential campaigns. I've worked on congressional campaigns. I've run my own campaigns on a local level. Volunteers are so integral. So that's one way. And that would be just kind of paying attention to your local news or your national news. Say you're really motivated right now with what's happening in Washington. There are people in your area running for Congress right now for November 2026. They might not need volunteers in February of 2025, but they're going to need them this summer. And it's a great way to get involved, just to figure out who's running, if you like your current congressperson, then you could volunteer for that person. But every member of Congress is up for re-election every 2 years, and they're basically always running. So if you like your congressperson, you could volunteer for them now. If you don't like them, you could find out in the next few months, probably people are going to start declaring running against them. You could start volunteering for them. So that's one track. The second track is everybody has local elected officials, no matter where you live. You have a mayor, or you have, like I am, a county supervisor, you have a city council person, you have a congressperson. You could see if you wanted to intern or volunteer in their office. And generally, like, I have a couple college students at UC Santa Barbara that volunteer with me, intern with me, and it's great. It's a wonderful way to get involved. And again, it's something you could do while keeping your current job if you were just kind of had this curiosity about politics. You don't have to jump in with 2 feet. You could just dabble and see if it feels good, if it sort of lives up to what you think it might be in the West Wing or whatever show you watch and you want to check it out.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I think sometimes people think of politics as it's so hard to enter, and you've just lowered the bar and made it so easy for anyone to jump in with even 2 hours a week.
Yeah, I don't know of an easier profession to enter, honestly. I couldn't, if I wanted to be a doctor, I couldn't just go
volunteer somewhere.
Volunteer in surgery. I'd have to meet a bunch of criteria before I was able to do that. Or if an accountant, you have to, literally the barrier, the threshold is, do you care about something?
Yeah. Are you aligned and do you care?
Yeah, that's the entry point. If you care about an issue or a party, or you want to get a crosswalk or whatever. These are cliches, but if you care, you can get involved. And I don't know of an easier profession that allows more points of entry.
Yeah. Laura, you've had experience at the federal and local level. Can you share with us about how to think about those two when you're thinking about a career in public service? And also, is it important to experience both?
Yeah, well, I love that having had both and in different phases of my life. I mean, definitely working on the federal level, like I worked in like I said, the West Wing of the White House. It doesn't get more exciting than that if you care about politics or care about the future of the country, to be steps away from the president and these heads of state that are, I was exposed to at a very young age of terms of daily work of working in the West Wing. I also worked in the United States Senate for this legend, Senator Ted Kennedy, this lion of the Senate who had been around at that time for 40 years and was the author of the Civil Rights Act, et cetera. So excitement and adrenaline certainly defined more of my federal experience. But now for the last 8 years, I've been on the local level. And I would say what defines that is actual real life impact on people's lives. And so the trade-offs, one isn't better than the other. They're just different. My excitement level isn't quite as high as it used to be in terms of what I'm doing on a daily basis. But I think my impact is higher, what I'm doing now on the local level.
And maybe you can also see the people you're impacting. So the return on that, like how you can, every day you're motivating yourself to show up, and now you can see the people that you are able to help.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's much more national, is more 30,000 foot level. You're passing legislation, hopefully to help people that you'll never encounter. Here, like I'm literally connecting people to a resource so that the dead brush behind their property, their yard, is cleared out because they're freaked out because their daughter just lost their house in the Palisades fire. So it's like that makes that person feel so much better. I just did that like yesterday, actually. That one person, she was so riddled with anxiety and reached out, and we were able to get the fire marshal folks to go in and make an assessment of her property, and they cleared out a bunch of dead brush. So she's probably sleeping better now. And that feels really, really good. And to be clear, I didn't do anything other than be responsive to her and to know how the system works and to know who to call and to do it in a nice way so that they could do it quickly, and they took care of her.
So in a way, being a connector, like all the resources and you can connect the right people.
Yeah. And to be really lofty, I mean, that's the beauty of our government. I mean, that's happening not just in Santa Barbara County, but it's happening all over every day for people. And that's why, fundamentally, I'm a big advocate of government and a believer in government because it's set up to provide the cohesive tissue so that society functions and that people are safe.
Yeah. Laura, can you give us a recap on what you are doing now locally in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I just said that phrase. I mean, I am a county supervisor. When I say that, no one has any idea what I do, even around here. So I get some blank looks. So how I follow up usually is say, well, the county exists. County government is there to keep you safe. So we run things like the fire department, the sheriff's department, mental health department, the public health department. We all saw that during a pandemic, the role of the public health department. We run the streets and transportation and make sure that our highways are safe. So it's all fundamentally, if I had to say it in one word, it's about safety. And that's what the county is there for. So hopefully you don't think about the county very much. You kind of think about it when you're worried about your safety generally.
Okay. And you are an elected official.
So there's 5 county supervisors in every county in California. And we are the elected officials that sit on top of this county infrastructure. So it's our job to vote on the budget and make sure that the programs are funded in the way that reflects our priorities. So our budget is $1.4 billion in Santa Barbara County. And every year we vote on that and we set priorities for how that money is going to be directed to take care of people.
Yeah. So what kind of skills do you need to be able to do your job?
Being a good listener is the first and foremost, really, just being responsive and kind of understanding where people are coming from. You have to be, I like to say, I have to be a very skilled generalist, right? I'm not an expert on one or two things. I have to be generally up on probably, 80 different issues related to the way that communities function, right? And to be able to be able to pivot really quickly.
So task switcher.
Yeah, task switcher. That's what I've had since I was a young person, is that ability to kind of grasp information that might be very detailed and sort of quickly assess what I need to know from it so that I can do something about that, rather than I admire like more of an academic mind or a scientific mind that goes real deep. My mind has never been quite like that, but I can discern fairly easily of like what's the need to know.
Yeah. So what is it like to go through an election? What does it take from like a human standpoint? Like what does it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very vulnerable experience. It's literally putting yourself out there, your brand, you become kind of a brand. People are critical of you. It takes a real thick skin. People like will put in writing in the newspaper, that someone called me vapid or, like it's mean. There's a lot of real personality criticisms to it, but it's also really thrilling. And I've viewed it as the times that I've done it as this real expression of myself and what I vision that our lives could be, and having that reason to think deep about, okay, what do I want the world to look like? And to be able to express that is a real privilege. So there's really hard parts about it, but there's really beautiful parts about an election because it's such an outcropping of your hopes and dreams.
Yeah. So like your vision for how you see Santa Barbara is more important to you than the criticism.
Oh yeah. And I think about the criticism, I've gotten quite used to it. I was on the school board, which was really tough during COVID. So it was a very fractious time in education. I'd say things still probably are, but I kind of, one day I realized I was meeting with a friend of mine who is our former fire chief. And I thought to myself, like he's run into burning buildings. Like, I don't know if I could run into a burning building, but I can read something negative about myself and kind of move on fairly quickly. So I just kind of think about it in that people have different skill sets, but definitely having that as a skill set is required the further you go in politics.
Like learning not to take it personally. It ideally doesn't hold you back. It's going to be there.
Yeah, it definitely gives you pause. I'm not oblivious to the criticism, but it doesn't hold, that's a great way of saying it. It doesn't hold me back. And so therefore that's kind of a signal to me that I've found the right trajectory for myself, because I think that that's fairly unique amongst people. I mean, I just hear that all the time. People say to me, oh, I could never do that. I don't know how you do that. Like to have things be, out in public record negatively about yourself. But for some reason I can.
And there's no way to learn it other than to do it. Like you can't prepare yourself for that. Like you have to actually put yourself out there and experience it and get over it.
Exactly.
You can't go do reps in the gym for this.
That's right. Or you can decide, hey, this is not for me. Like this feeling of I carry that with me too long, or I've known people who they were on the school board for a little bit and they just decided with good reason, like this isn't for me. I can be more productive in another part of education or whatever the example might be.
Yeah. For people interested in politics, can you jump in at any time? Like you did say the volunteering can happen at any time, but if you want a longer career in politics, like are there certain hurdles where it's easier to get in than not? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think unlike a lot of professions, I think you can jump in at different stages of life. I mean, the best example in our current times is Nancy Pelosi had all 5 kids, and before she even ran for anything herself, I think I don't know the exact age, but I imagine she was already in her 40s. So it's harder the longer you wait for sure. And there's definitely a pecking order. I would imagine there definitely is in my area, but I imagine that's pretty universal. So you can't just sort of expect to jump in and run for higher office and leapfrog a bunch of people. Sometimes you do and you get lucky. But no, I think it's something that, particularly if you care about an issue and you might not want to be elected on the ballot yourself, there's no end to volunteering or being involved, or maybe volunteering and then getting picked up as a staff person or something like that.
Yeah. Do you have a North Star or something that you're working towards that drives you every day?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about kids. I think I'm really grateful that I'd worked for a lot of elected officials and I worked on campaigns for other people, but the first time I did it for myself was for the school board. And I'm just grateful for that grounding, because that is my North Star, is how I was trained during that experience of 6 years of just always thinking through the lens of what's best for the kids. And then that I've just carried that with me into this bigger job of, okay, well, how is this going to impact kids? It's just a really good question whenever I'm looking at any issue. It helps me kind of narrow out a lot of the other noise and just focus in on what's probably the best thing. So if I had to say I had a North Star, it would be that when we do right by our children, we do right by everybody. And that's something I often say to kind of keep me reminded and keep me focused.
Yeah. What makes your work worth it now? Like, you've brought in a few things, but if you had to tell somebody why you do what you do.
Because it's very satisfying to help people. And that sounds, I'm not Mother Teresa. There's also excitement. There's also there's competitiveness to it. There's drama with voting and different priorities and working with different coalitions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it feels really good what's worth it for me is that I get to do a job where my charge is to make my hometown better. The place that I grew up and the place that I love, like, it's literally my job to try to make it better. If I could, I would do it for free. That's been a real litmus test for me. Is this a job I would do for free? Absolutely.
Yeah, but better that it's paid.
Yeah, not paid much, but yeah.
Yeah. So your return on the effort you put in every day, it's beyond financial means. Like, you have to be really excited about what you're contributing, because that is part of what gives you energy to keep going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll flip it sometimes and we'll have such a great experience with a constituent, or we helped get this homeless shelter in our area. And we met with one of the homeless residents who's living there now, and he's getting his life turned around. He was 5 years living up in this encampment above this riverbed. And he came out and thanked me for having helped get this shelter going. And my colleague and I, we walked to our cars. It was a couple Fridays ago. And I just looked at her. I was like, we get paid for this.
This is what you're doing it for.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing it for this guy, Jay, who now is trying to reunite with his daughter, who's 15. And then it's almost like the secondary part is that the paycheck comes. I don't even really think about that on a regular basis.
Yeah. If you were to give advice to young people looking to get involved in politics beyond volunteering, but if there are programs or anything to sort of learn skills and learn to use their voice, learn to public speak, or whatever is needed, what are some of the resources nationally or locally that you really recommend?
Politics is a meritocracy, so certainly connections help get you in the door if you know your congressman or whatever, and there might be a position open. But it's really a trial by fire. And I think as much as there are good programs out there, and of course you can study political science, but I just found that it's being a practitioner of it is the best experience. Certainly there's, different leadership programs. I don't think those are required by any means, but I certainly think that they would help. Public speaking, that's something I wish I've taken classes. It's kind of on my list, but I've never done it. But I do public speak a lot now, and it's just practice. So I would say a program is a plus, but not a requirement.
Yeah, yeah. And for you, as you move ahead in your career, are there aspects that you still want to reach to make your overall career worthwhile?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of specific things I want to get done for Santa Barbara County. We have the second highest poverty rate in the state of California, and that really troubles me on a daily basis. So I have a lot of goals. In terms of my career path, I'm at a really good place where I could see myself doing this for a long time. And that means I'd have to get voted in every 4 years. But it feels really good. I think for the first time in my life to be settled and to think, okay, I could do this job 8, 12, 16 years potentially. I've never had that feeling before. So it's novel to me.
Yeah. How do you know you're settled? What is it how do you have that personal information loop?
I'm just not striving as much as I had in previous, where you're at a job and you're kind of looking up to say, oh, could I have that person's job above me? In a good way, I don't have that right now.
Yeah. Your list sounds long of all the things you want to accomplish and can accomplish within this job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I should add, I have a 13-year-old son. This job is very conducive to work-life balance. And I've had jobs that were not, that they were thankfully at times in my life before I was a mom, but where I literally worked 7 days a week and was not necessarily the healthiest. But it's a real factor for me that this job also has really good work-life balance, which is important.
Yeah, I love that. I was wondering if you have any books that you have loved that have really helped you understand politics or a career in politics. that you could recommend?
Yeah, in fact, I have it. It's right here because I give it to everybody. It's not like an I wouldn't say this is like Winston Churchill or anything, but it's writing for busy readers, communicate more effectively in the real world. And I highlighted this book to death and given it out as gifts to everybody I work with because communications is so important, especially in the world of politics and government, making sure people understand why we're doing things and for what purpose. And the more we can communicate clearly, this book is by, Todd Rogers and Jessica Lasky-Fink. They've just done a lot of science behind how people skim and what people look for. And the more that you can land your idea and resonate with people is increasingly important with all of the attention demands we have on ourselves right now.
Yeah, what a great resource. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time. And I love that you've given such a low bar to get started in politics. And I really appreciate all the information that you shared. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks, Georgie.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
I would love to share my take on this interview. 2 things to remember. First, if you are interested in politics or public service, try it out. While other professions require extensive credentials or certifications, politics has perhaps the lowest barrier to entry of any field. The only real requirement, according to Laura, is that you care about an issue. Anyone can start by volunteering 2 hours a week on a campaign or in a local official's office. The accessibility is remarkable, though it's worth noting what Capps acknowledges is her early unpaid internships came from a place of financial privilege. The second thing I want to point out is about variety. Laura's career exemplifies how politics rewards adaptable generalists who stay true to their values. From the White House to local government, each role leveraged her ability to synthesize information and pivot between diverse challenges. While specialized careers demand mastery in one area, her political path thrived on quick comprehension across many domains, from public safety to education policy. The constant thread? Her unwavering focus on core principles, especially improving children's lives. For those who love variety but hate compromising their values, politics offers a unique career path. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Work That's Worth It. Remember, every conversation we share is designed to empower you to build a career that's truly worth your time and energy. There are future disruptors out there just like you who would appreciate the conversations in this podcast. Please support me by spreading the word and sharing this episode with a friend or two, or visit my website at georgieenthoven.com. That's spelled GeorgienThoven.com. Until next time, ask yourself, what problems am I solving, and are they worth my valuable time? Your intentional choices today can lead to exponential impact tomorrow. Thanks for listening.